Hey everybody, welcome back. So I reached out to the people with the sample from the Roswell 1947 crash, Falcon Space, via Tim Ventura. Tim Ventura's channel interviews all the leading people in science and technology. Check it out, link in the description. So, what do the people with the sample, probably from 1947, think about my theory that it came from a French battery?
So, Jarod, do you think it's worthwhile me continuing with some crazy battery research?
Absolutely. I am super excited for you to keep going down the battery rabbit hole. And here's why. Because every time there's a potential prosaic explanation, a lot of people want to latch onto that, right? Because everybody, refuses to believe that this thing could indeed be, super duper weird, right? It's got to have a prosaic explanation. Myself included. I want a prosaic explanation because then the story is finally finished, right? And this story just keeps dragging on and on and on. But it keeps dragging on because it's so dang interesting, because there's always unanswered questions here that require an answer. So for the battery explanation that you're going down,
Yeah.
the one scenario that I can see is where you end up coming up with an answer from the battery stuff where we see, wouldn't you know it, they made batteries of similar dimensions and compositions to what we find. They were able to get super duper 1 to 5 micron thick bismuth layers.
I hope to find that.
They were able to dope the magnesium layers with alternating layers of zinc inside of them, right? Because the magnesium layers, when you look at the Aero report, the magnesium layers are not equally doped with zinc. It's like you have a strongly doped zinc magnesium layer and then a weakly doped zinc magnesium layer. So that alternating thing, if there is any kind of 1940s or earlier like way that people were doing that, I would be so excited because I know that that's going to be a thing that Aero or other debunkers are going to want to latch onto, and they'll just point at that. And it's super easy for me to say, yeah, but uranium. Why would there be uranium? Okay, well, maybe they painted it with uranium paint. Okay, thallium. Why is there there gold nanowires? Why is there nano structure resonators in that? Right? It's got all the other weird stuff, but the prosaic explanation, it gives us a link in the chain of the story, right?
Okay.
Falcon Space are really interesting people. They're at the cutting edge of science. They are not the established science community. They actually do research into things like anti-gravity. For example, Jarod and his colleague Mark have built a working machine of the Frederick Alciphon gravity modification device. So this is a group of people in a company pushing at the edges of science, not the established science community. I imagine if the Roswell sample was sent to a very old-fashioned laboratory, they wouldn't be investigating whether it was a metamaterial modifying gravity. Falcon Space are at the cutting edge and do that. They were so kind to me. My crazy harebrained theory that it was a French battery when they've actually got part of the sample. Listen to what Tim and Jarod describe what they found.
Hey, everybody. I am so honored to have Jarod and Tim with me today. Look, I have to make something really clear. Jarod and Falcon Space have an actual piece of this sample from Roswell or from New Mexico, anyway, from 1947. And what I'm saying is only a possibility. It could still be a flying saucer, but from what Falcon Space, and let's talk to both Tim and Jarod about this, has found. Jarod, do you think that the sample that you've actually got, it came genuinely from 1947? And then secondly, do you think from isotopes it's actually from Earth?
So as far as being from 1947, I think the jury is still out on that. Aero tried saying that it did seem like it came from a long time ago, but the provenance on the sample has never been there, right? We do know it dates back to 1996. Right, it comes from the original Art's parts with Art Bell and Linda Moulton Howe. So we know it dates back to 1996. And thanks to a few other samples from other crashes that we have tested, it's starting to look more and more like this thing is indeed from a UFO, because we have other pieces from other UFO crashes that have the exact same stuff in them.
Well, that changes the story. But you very much raised my interest by in a previous YouTube film where you said if only there was evidence of a bismuth magnesium alloy pre 1947. So I went, I wonder if there is. Let me just quickly tell you why I'm at this position. I've been working with Joshua Bertrand. We've been talking about buoyant balloons and aerogel, and Project Mogul came up, and he said you should really look at Mogul. And I went, oh, Mogul, the thing that was the cover story for the Roswell UFO. And I went, well, but it really exists. The U.S. Air Force got so peed off saying it was a cover story, they have released everything, all the technical documents. And in one of the technical documents, they specify the battery requirements for a balloon, which needs to last maybe 10 days to 3 weeks. Low weight, high power, very low temperature requirements. And they specify that they've outsourced for longer missions to this company. Now, I looked into that, and it turns out that SAFT, which is a French battery specialist company, probably supplied the high power, low weight, low temperature batteries for Mogul. I'm still waiting for an interview with SAFT. France moves kind of slowly. It turns out, Tim, that the R&D lab for these batteries is only down the road from my house in Bordeaux, which is only a couple of hours drive. So I will certainly head down there. And then when I looked into what they did, they talk about bismuth magnesium battery alloys as cathodes and anodes for rechargeable batteries for weight and temperature. So I contacted you guys. I mean, do you think I'm way off with this idea?
No,
I think it's worth investigating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I mean, the thing that strikes me is I've never heard of any battery chemistry that uses bismuth and magnesium, and I think one of the big concerns is the layering on this was, right, from what I understand, was probably beyond the technical abilities of any company back in that day, right?
Well, SAFT are absolutely specialist battery manufacturers. I mean, they're also heroes, and that's why the U.S. Air Force was using them in 1947. A quick backstory: SAFT, during German occupation of France, continued to make rechargeable batteries for the P-51 and smuggled every one on a resistance railroad out of France to Britain. I mean, and certainly the Air Force used them. And they are incredible specialists to this day. They make batteries for balloons or bombs. They will make you anything. And their alloy technology is second to none. Alloy, French word, friends, was originally, obviously it predates batteries. It goes back to the Bronze Age, but alloying is a real specialist of SAFT. So I'm going down that rabbit hole. So, Jarod, have you found any history of bismuth in batteries?
I originally went down the battery rabbit hole when I first started with the arts parts thing. And it wasn't because the bismuth, it was because magnesium and zinc. Those two things together looks kind of like it. One more niche area of energy storage that I looked into was this idea that you can store hydrogen inside of magnesium.
Oh.
And that's been a thing since like the 1910s or 1920s. It's a really old way of doing stuff. But again, it doesn't look like that's what's going on here because you have so many other weird things in the sample. And it's not just that it has like the thin bismuth stuff in it, but it has uranium in it. It has thallium in it. It has all these rare earth elements in it. And then it's got microstructures in it and microtechnology looking stuff in it. So it's got like nanowire. Our sample has a little nanowire that is like coaxial. It's like made of gold in the core, and it's got quartz cladding around it. and it's
Oh,
got a geometry to it that looks like it's being used for beam steering. That is my take on it, right? Is That's what I'm seeing in this thing.
yeah.
But yeah, it'd be really, really weird for a battery to
Nah,
end up having that kind of stuff.
no, no,
That's
cut. Right.
before we even go down to the nanoscale, where stuff gets really interesting.
Yeah, I've seen your microscope results and the structures and the shapes and the spheres and the colors. Yeah, yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm just looking for a prosaic, earthly thing. Let's
Yeah.
just quickly talk about isotopes. I mean, I've been a bit shot down by saying this, and I would love your two's view on this. If the isotopes of the material match known isotopes on Earth, does that exclude it being extraterrestrial, or just because, I mean, people are saying to me, well, how, Simon, but I mean, they might be the same isotopes on the planet Zog. I mean,
I can speak to that actually.
please,
And
please, Tim.
that is an intriguing one. And this goes back to Hal Puthoff's ultra terrestrials, but it also goes to Dr. Kevin Newth's study. He did a reverse Drake equation study last year, I believe,
Right.
maybe a little bit earlier. And the idea behind it was when he did the math for it, alien civilization, exploration, and expansion, his model said, yes, ET would have arrived. They would have arrived as much as 400,000 years ago. And I think he's since revised it earlier. And so there have been, and I've noticed this has been growing, right? I'm seeing more and more references to this in different places. This idea that ET, they are maybe located in the sea, right?
Right. They're
And
here.
they may have been here for a very long time, much longer than us. And it is interesting also when I talked to Sean Cahill went down
Sure.
to he went down to the coast where the Tic Tac was sighted, right? The coast in Mexico. There's a little town there with Lou Elizondo. And
That's right.
one of the things he had said was when they started asking people in that area, they said, look, this event happened. We were on a ship. It was out at sea. It was off the coast. And the response was, and these are little fishing village people,
Yeah.
instead of looking at them like they were crazy, these people came back and said, oh, yeah, that happens all the time.
We see
In
them.
fact,
Yeah.
yeah, the Tic Tac has been seen so many times there. It's a part of the local village lore going back hundreds of years.
Wow.
So yeah, it is entirely possible that if this technology has a signature that's earthly, maybe it was grown or made here on Earth.
Jarod?
Completely concur.
Oh,
Since it seems like we have high technology that seems as though it's higher than what was available at the time, some
mhm.
of the nanostructures that we'll hopefully be able to show pictures of eventually, not the microstructured beads things. I'm saying at the atomic level.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right.
Some of the structures down there we can't share those quite yet, but those were not available to have been made in 1996.
Right.
So that somebody made it because we have it, but it wasn't humans in 1996 that was making it,
Or
It's it
or 1947. Right.
or especially not 1947.
Well,
Yeah.
another thing that's kind of worth keeping in mind is like the research that you're doing, right? A lot of it, and maybe not in this specific case, but a lot of the research that you've done is on things that weren't public, just a few
Yeah.
years ago that are opening up, becoming public. A lot of the research that folks like Jared and myself are doing is on emerging technology stuff that isn't known. And
Right.
so I'm not going to make any claims and say, wow, we just discovered this and it's a brand new thing. But it's more in terms of saying um, the research that goes on is going to keep growing, and I think it's going to get better and better and better as we learn more about what we're doing. Because the stuff that you're describing right now, I don't think people would have understood this back in the Art Bell 1996 days, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. And that, yeah, absolutely. And there's always going to be that bleeding edge of emerging technology or even secret technology that you guys are actually pushing the boundaries of. I'm very much looking at balloons and secret stuff that I think should be out in the public domain. But yeah, no, the science of actually looking at the structure of materials, the metamaterials, the nanomaterials, all that is just fantastic. Well done. Yeah. So, do you think I should continue down? I mean, I'm quite interested in talking to SAFT about battery technology. I think that's interesting in its own right.
Yeah, I think during World War II, even though things are documented, a lot of the context
Yeah,
wasn't well clarified,
right.
And I had read, I can't remember the name of the book offhand, but they were talking about where they tested the Nazi V2 rockets. And in this book, it
Uh,
opened up this whole new picture of how it was done, right? The Peenemünde facility and all
right.
that. And I was like, I've been reading about this thing forever. And now I have this new picture and I understand it in a much better way. And in terms of the battery technology,
Sure.
companies like that, if you follow that thread, it could open completely new paths of information and it could explain other things that are completely unrelated. I mean, there's a lot that can come out of that just by looking at the real history instead of this brief synopsis that gets cloudy over time.
Oh, absolutely. Just, I mean, today I had such an amazing day. I spoke to this guy who is an expert and historian on the Mogul future project called Project Genetrex. And he said, "Hey, Simon, did you know that one of the balloons with American film, probably made by Kodak, that was specifically anti-static, was shot down with unexposed film, a big roll of it? And the Soviet Union used the unexposed film in Luna 3 when they took the very first picture of the other side of the moon, was shot on American cellular film because they didn't have the. I mean, those kind of stories I just love. I mean, I never knew that, but I mean,
I'd never heard that one either.
right.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
very
no, that's
first picture of the other side of the moon, obviously not dark, was shot on American film. So what happened was the sister project to Mogul was launched from Europe because it was nearer the Soviet Union, and it was specifically a high-tech camera project. It wasn't sending telemetry back. They recovered the balloons by snatching them out of the sky, like they did with the Corona satellites, where they dropped the film capsules. And but what they forgot was that balloons are 80,000 feet during the day and they drop to 40,000 feet at night. And that was within range of the Soviet era fighters that shot a whole bunch down. And they took them apart and copied the optics and copied the cameras. But they were amazed at how the film was made, which they didn't have for space missions. Great story.
yeah, yeah. Well, and in terms of this stuff, another aspect of this, you're touching on the Russian aspect of it. Like
Right.
Jarod has dug into the Dalnogorsk crash, and there was some sample materials there as well. And then on my side, if I could put a plug in for altpropulsion.com,
Do.
I have been adding stories to the website. I'm going
Right.
back through archival information and I'm finding a ton of material that was, again, from this inventor community in Russia that it's public. It was never really suppressed, but it never got good exposure in the West. And so I'm trying to bring that there. And so
I
that's
see
on alt
that. I see that.
propulsion. And then
And stuff from Russia in a foreign language that was pre-internet. Yeah, I've been reading your work, Alt Propulsion, excellent, and Tim's work on Medium as well. So Jarod, tell us about samples. I mean, you think there's other samples which are analogous to the little guide that you've got?
Yep. So Tim just mentioned the Dalnogorsk case. For folks who
Yeah,
don't know, in 1986, there was a little mining village over in uh, eastern Russia
right.
where it was a mining town with just a few 100 people there. And January, they see this thing plow into the mountainside right outside of town. They wait a couple of days to go up there, and they find all these pieces of the crashed UFO there, right? Well,
Right.
those pieces were tested. And in some of the books that have been written about it, we have this wonderful laundry list of not just the elements that are in there, but some of the nanostructures, the microstructures that are present in that thing. And wouldn't you know it, it has so much stinking overlap with Art's parts, it's uncanny. So it's got every single one of the same elements. It's got the same gold nanowire clad in quartz. And then there's another case that I don't think we can talk too much about yet.
Okay.
But I'll say what I can about it. The other case kind of supports the Down-the-Gorsk and Art's parts as well, because the morphology of the sample matches. The elements in the sample match.
Right.
So that's a pretty good indicator. And it's from a completely different crash in the 90s in a different part of the world.
Right.
So very interesting that we have right now at least 3 different data points. They're all pointing towards the same morphology of samples, the same composition of samples, and some of them have similar microtechnologies present, namely those gold nanowires.
And yeah, Jarod and Tim and Mark all work together at Falcon Space. And something that you've been doing with Mark is looking at the AlphaSon experiment and testing these samples for gravity modification effects. Any news on that?
We haven't been putting any of the samples inside the AlphaSon machine yet. We're a little concerned to do that because right now a lot of the samples that we put in there end up having permanent weight loss. Yep. So that's not what we want. And we definitely don't want to do that to something as unique and special as the UFO sample that we have. So instead, what I think we're going to try to do, and this is probably sometime next year, we have a terahertz laser. And this terahertz laser, we should be able to test the sample under different frequencies that at the nanoscale, it appears to be tuned to these specific frequencies. So I already have a pretty decent idea on what frequencies we want to test this thing at. But at this point, it's a matter of logistics and repair. I have to move the terahertz source from Mark's place over to my place and get it all fixed up and running. But hopefully sometime next year, we're going to be seeing the results from those terahertz tests on the samples.
Let me try and unpick that maybe for people who are not understanding, and I need to understand what you've done. By examining the structure of the material, am I correct in thinking that you've worked out its possible frequency response? Like a metamaterial, some metamaterials are designed specifically for microwave frequencies, say a skin of an aircraft, and others supposedly can do even optical wavelengths today, maybe. I mean, there's been papers written on that. So is that that's why you think a terahertz frequency, because of the actual physical structure of the cavities or the...
Correct. Yeah, we have some structures that I can't release pictures of or too many details of just yet, but there's some structures at the nanoscale that indicate to me not just what frequency it's operating at, but what harmonic of that frequency the entire system is designed to be operating at. Ooh. So it's kind of like if you see a radio antenna, right, that's like an 80-meter long antenna, that tells you what frequency range that antenna is supposed to be operating at. Well, we're at a much, much smaller scale, so that antenna isn't meters long, it's nanometers long. So we know that we're at the terahertz scale. But one thing that I'll mention that's really interesting is, coincidentally enough, that frequency range that this thing operates at is the same dang frequency range that Lou Elizondo mentioned in his book.
Oh, so part of some of defense contractors' observables ties in with what you're finding in the material science, maybe.
Yep.
All right. Oh, well.
Well, and Simon, if I can interject, I
Yeah.
have put photos, and you're more than welcome if you want to, or if you don't want to, or if you want to use some of them in the video, right? I've put up
Yeah.
photo galleries for Dalmagorsk, photos that I was sent by
Oh, yeah.
investigators
Yeah.
on
Thank
that,
you. Thank you.
as well as Art's Parts. I've put up tons of photos that we shot of Art's Parts. And then the other thing that I'm doing is a lot of background research. Most of that has been, I am so incredibly grateful to Jarod. Like, he's
Right.
found some amazing resources. Linda Moulton Howe's Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2,
All
and
right.
she had several YouTube videos as well where she went in depth. They did amazing testing on these samples back in 1996 with
Oh,
Travis Taylor. And I had heard about this again on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. I
right.
had heard about this and it was detailed there. But when I went through the book, Jarod told me how to, where to find that. I was like, oh my God, that's super in depth. In addition to that, several other people have done testing on this, and so I'm working on some story material that I'm going to put online there. And I'm also
Yeah.
looking at this recent ORNL report as well. So there's a lot of material that's just for Art's Parts. And one of the things since we've started investigating this, especially more publicly, Jared has had like 4 or 5 people come forward with samples, and we've actually had several of those.
Ah.
There's Frank Kimbler's. What
Ah.
was it? I think that was the Roswell skip site sample, and then we had another one from the plains of San Augustine. Uh, and so, we've looked at 3 or 4 different samples, and unless I'm mistaken, most of those are basically aluminum in nature, right? And they could be completely prosaic. They could be airline
Sure.
parts. It could be a bumper from a '57 Chevy.
Right.
Art's Parts really stands apart from
Hmm.
these others that I've looked at least.
Yeah. You would agree, Jared, that the sample
Abs-
is special.
Absolutely. Other samples that we've tested, there's been like one little tiny unique thing here or there, like the San Augustine Augustine one, like it had a weird diamagnetic response where you do
Mhm.
a room temperature superconductivity test on it. Um, or just a superconductivity test, and you try to drop it on a magnet and see how it responds to that. And it had a little bit of a weird response. But other than that, at the nanoscale, all the elements in it, everything else, it looked really prosaic. The Art's Parts thing, one of
Right.
the things that's like a smoking gun that this thing's weird is how many elements are present in it, right? Normally humans make stuff with 5, at most 10 elements in it. But when you find stuff with like 30 plus elements in it,
Oh, I
like
don't know.
that humans aren't manufacturing stuff purposely with like that large of a recipe of elements. That's like the first easy test to go, this is weird. Art's Parts takes it to the, nth degree though. As you go deeper and deeper and smaller, it gets weirder and weirder.
There's a lot of mythology here. You know what? When I was a kid, because
Right.
I heard it when it came out back in the '90s, I would have died just to spend a few minutes with Art's Parts, and I was there when they actually unwrapped the sample and started investigating, and I was like, it was
Wow.
so exciting. And so I should preface that by saying it is only exciting for about an hour, and then you're like, okay, that's it, it's over. The moment has passed,
Right.
and now it's like. I've seen it a few more times since then, and it's just like, yep, still UFO sample or
But what
whatever it
you
is.
guys are doing makes it exciting again because you're delving into its inner secrets. So yeah, no, it's very exciting, and
We
congratulations.
we took it to the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, the SCU conference, because Dr. Sadagas, who's been doing right now, he's been doing the major load of the analysis on the sample. Major shout out to Dr. Matthew Sadagas for all of his hard work on what he's getting done on it. But during his SCU talk, he was able to hold up the sample at the end of his talk, and because we brought it with us there, so he's showing people like, and
Right.
wouldn't you know it, right in my hands right here,
Hey.
right? It makes for a great prop too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's it.
I don't really understand. You've got a what? How big is your sample, and is that the
Oh,
whole
very
thing?
small,
It's
very
it's
small.
like a few millimeters or a few
Yeah,
So
it's
grams.
we
it.
I should, if it's okay to preface that. So yeah, the sample, it is very small sample that Falcon Space has.
Right.
It is a proverbial chip off the old block, right? And
Right.
then I believe last summer, actually, we were able to work with a couple other samples, and Jared knows how much he can share about those, so I won't go into it. But and so they were pretty much identical to the sample that we had, at least from what I could see. So we've been able to see those. And then the original, if I
Yeah.
understand it
Yeah.
correctly, there is a much larger sample that Linda Moulton House still has.
Right.
So, someday, who knows? Maybe we'll get to examine that one as well.
Sure. Well, as soon as you're obviously getting fantastically interesting results. The terahertz resonance from frequency is going to be so interesting, and maybe that will unlock you being able to test, another part of the same sample and see if it does the same thing. Oh yeah. Well. Thank you very much. I will continue with my historic research into into batteries, but it seems like even clever people in France wouldn't use that particular recipe to build an anode or a cathode for a rechargeable
Well,
battery.
and Simon, I know you do so much work in the UAP, UFO area, and there is a tremendous history in France and the French have always taken it very seriously, and they've
Yeah, they
always
do.
done good research on it.
Mhm.
And I don't think that that's had the exposure that it needs to. So there is so much that you can explore in your area.
Yeah, since YouTube has become AI bilingually dubbed into French, it has certainly increased I now get lots of comments in French, which I can translate and reply to, or use my basic French to read and reply to. And yeah, I'm making some really interesting contacts with French OVNI, which is the
Oh, okay.
UAP or UFO word in France. And yeah, as you say, Tim, they have always categorized using very much the Jacques Vallée categorization system, and there is an interactive map of every sighting. There's no stigma involved in reporting something unknown. It gets immediately, it's not dismissed. It's put into like unlikely, likely, interesting, and amazing. And you can search on this blobby map of France of where all the sightings have been. I'm particularly interested in a Jacques Vallée sighting in Provence. My wife is very interested in the art of Paul Cézanne, and this sighting is just behind the mountain that Cézanne painted. So we visited that area, and it's very, very, very strange and interesting. But guys, I am honored to talk to you both, and it's a joy as always. And carry on the good work. Keep everybody informed of the strange effects that you find. And yeah, good. Carry on.
Wonderful. Well,
Okay,
thank you
Simon.
again for having us on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Hey, thanks, guys. Especially thanks for treating me so kindly. I thought that was a very interesting observation that you respect my research into prosaic, normal, human, secret technology, while Falcon Space is at the bleeding edge of metamaterials. One final thought. Tim Ventura does a great job with his channel, link in the description. And interestingly, Tim has just interviewed again physicist Jack Sarfati, who's actually sat in this chair, as you will remember. And what Jack says is fascinating. Jack has come up with a patent for a new metamaterial way of modifying gravity. But as far as I understand, utilizing the strange abilities of material science. Isn't that really interesting? Because Falcon Space are discovering that maybe the Roswell sample modifies gravity.
I discovered some interesting things that I don't think anyone else has noted before on the sample. We found ultra microscopic whiskers. These little tiny whiskers have a diameter of less than 1 micron, And I can zoom way in here. So the diameter of this thin white line is less than a micron. In a lot of places, they blew out in like a star shape, which is very indicative that there's been some kind of high voltage applied to the thing at some point. This particular picture I have here happens to have this ball on the end of it, which I thought was quite interesting. We took some control pictures of magnesium orthosilicate because there's a book from the 1960s that talks about the samples retrieved from craft looking like they had lines of magnesium orthosilicate. However, these are about 20 plus microns wide compared to sub 1 micron. So it's probably not the same stuff that we're seeing here. Those little whiskers are probably not magnesium orthosilicate. The other thing I did was I took a lot of videos where I was able to, let's see if I can full screen that for you, where I start zooming in and taking better shots of these whiskers here that are all spewing out in that star-shaped pattern. It's a very odd thing. We still need to do further analysis to identify what those whiskers are made of, what their composition of. They're located all over the samples. And the cool thing about this metallurgical microscope is that it has a lot of variability and adjustability so that you can color these things in a lot of different lightings and look for different polarizations of these things.
Okay, but so I think one of the important things is that, so the ARTS parts, purported UAP sample has what appears to be microstructures, right?
Correct. And these microstructures, we have yet to identify whether those are accidental or purposeful. It's probably prosaic, just as a from another expert that we had come in and give us their input. They thought that it kind of reminded them of tin whiskers. Now, tin whiskers are a thing that normally happens when certain metals are in a very high voltage gradient environment and you start getting these little ions creating very thin strings or whiskers coming off. However, tin whiskers are much larger than these. So whatever these whiskers are made of, it allowed it to be ultra small at thicknesses, diameters of 1 to 2 microns or less, and they all are pointing out and originating from the same central structure. So I found probably about a dozen spots all over the sample, the bismuth side of the sample, that ends up having these particular microstructures on it. And I got another video, last video to share with you, maybe. And this one is more towards the middle. And these microstructures, very difficult to see when I move the mouse. There you go. So these microstructures, a lot of them seem to happen down in the crevices, down in the cracks, the very narrow areas on the bismuth side of the sample. We're going to do further analysis through the metallurgical microscope eventually, but right now we're focused on getting isotope ratios because we think that'll give us the best bet on where to look for next as to where these craft are getting their materials from. If we can identify the source, where the magnesium and the zinc and the bismuth, where those things are being mined from based upon their isotope ratios, that should give us a real good smoking gun on places to look for potential other samples.
Wonderful. Well, Jarod, thank you again so much for walking us through this.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I'm not at all discouraged by what Tim and Jarod have found. I will continue my quest into advanced alloys in battery technology in France. I think that's a parallel story. What exactly crashed near Roswell in 1947 is still a mystery. I guess the truth is out there.